I'm Ali Dorey. When the Dean asked me to contribute some reflections for Holy Week for Wakefield Cathedral, which was last year originally actually, I immediately thought the most useful thing I could contribute would be some reflections and stories from my experience of living in a communal household, where I've been living for the last 10 years, near the middle of Sheffield. And as I pondered a bit more on that theme, I started to think, actually, what I've learned from this communal living has been that the way of Jesus is a narrow way. So the theme for our reflections during Holy Week this year is the narrow way. And I'll be referring to the narrow way of vulnerability, the narrow way of trust, the narrow way of listening, the narrow way of community, the narrow way of hope, the narrow way of love, all these kind of themes, and using those to draw out some stories and thoughts that reflect on the readings for Holy Week, but also on my experience of living in that way. The thing about the way of following Jesus is that sometimes it's really difficult to discern where that way is, what that way is. And other times it's really obvious what that way is. The problem is not discerning the way, it's walking it. And those are the kind of areas that living communally has really deepened my walk and given me something that I think I can share that might be useful to others. Along the way with these reflections, I'll be referring occasionally to the artwork of Dinah Rowe Kendall, who used to live in Sheffield. She doesn't any longer. And she's published a book called Allegories of Heaven, which is beautiful. It's full of images of gospel stories as they might appear if they'd happened in Sheffield. So I hope you forgive the analogy with Sheffield, but I think generally speaking, seeing some gospel stories portrayed in Yorkshire is a really lovely and refreshing way of viewing the stories. So I'll refer to that occasionally along the way. Along the narrow way of living communally for the last 10 years, there have been many pearls of great price. There have been extraordinary holy moments that you really wouldn't credit could happen. And they've come from the precious and generous heart of God, who just will not let us or the friends we've made go. So I'll share a few of those moments with you through this week, the joy and the challenge of them, and sometimes the things that made us laugh. And I'll link all of that to the narrow way that they have led us on, and that maybe you're being invited to journey on as well. I hope that this will really inspire you and maybe shed some light on your journey, and may invite you to take up the challenge of walking this narrow way too, whatever that might mean in your life.